Magic is just a different game than it was 10, 15 years ago, even 5 years ago, where the competitive focus isn't the focus of Magic as a whole. It's definitely a very strong contributor. And it's one of the things that I really enjoy about Magic, but that's on a personal level. Has nothing to do with the business side of Magic. We have a very, very strong kind of casual and EDH community and kind of beginner and friendly kind of just like hangout community. So we definitely facilitate that.
Michael, if you could tell us a little bit about your relationship with gaming and how that transpired into owning a game store.
Yeah, so I mean, it started off in terms of Magic. So I guess like the quick and dirty of Finch and Sparrow Games. For the longest time, we actually really only did Magic the Gathering, and that's what we were primarily interested in. So I mean, even like as a kid, like my dad, he had like sports cards and stuff like that. So I was like familiar with like collectibles, things like that. I had Pokemon cards. But yeah, I think it was like 8 or 10 or something like that. I was at like a summer camp, something like that. And like the cool older kids had Magic cards. And then I learned how to play and then eventually bought some cards of my own and started playing. And then fast forward to like 2012, that summer of 2012, or right before Innistrad came out. I was in college. I went to LMU in Southern California, and then I just happened to pick it up again after not really playing for the longest of time. And I discovered that, oh wait, people play this game still. Oh, that's kind of cool. So like I downloaded like Duels of the Planeswalkers. Yeah, right, that ages me a little bit. And then I found out that there was actually a store just a little bit down the ways from my school. And then I went there a couple of times to started drafting. And then I really went like deep into it and started playing a bunch. I would like travel to GPs eventually, like over the couple of years afterwards, I would travel to GPs and stuff like that. And then more and more, I found myself kind of like buying and selling cards. And then yeah, then fast forward, I guess, a couple of years past that, then the opportunity kind of presented itself for the store. Myself and then another person that I was working with, we were basically working out of his kitchen, essentially, and doing online stuff only. And then the opportunity presented itself to kind of like take over a store. So we did. We rebranded it, we renamed it, and did all of that stuff. And then, that was in 2018. So then fast forward to where we are now. And we've just been doing more and more of that. So I've been doing card games for a while now.
How'd you come up with the store name?
Yeah, so that's a question that I get a lot. And then is actually, so I inherited it in the sense that my previous business partner, essentially, that guy that I was talking about where we were working out of his kitchen, it has since, Finch and Sparrow Games has since become, solely mine. But in the beginning, that was an inside joke that he had, Finch and Sparrow, with a couple of his buddies going back like super, super far back. And we were figuring out kind of what we wanted to do in terms of a name. And I don't know about yourself, but I'm guessing you probably interact with a fair amount of stores. But it seems like, especially ones that deal primarily in Magic, a lot of them have names that revolve around Lotus Games or Power 9 Games or something that is kind of very much tied to the game that they specialize in. You even see it with Pokemon stores and stuff like that. But yeah, so that inside joke that he had, it turned into, this is great because it has nothing to do with card games whatsoever. So we're just like, all right, cool. This is fun. So we kind of just rolled with that. And now I get this question all the time to this day. Like, what do the birds even mean? And it's, just a cool, fun story that had nothing to do with gaming whatsoever. And I think it's just kind of unique in the space in general.
Certainly a unique name. And I like that it references like animals and stuff like that. And I always like that there's a unique little story behind each and every store name. Did you, Mike, did you grow up in Southern California your whole life?
Yeah. Basically, I've been in, like the greater LA area, since I was born in Glendale, and then I moved slowly, slightly more south, kind of like ever since. But yeah, born and raised in the greater LA area, came a little bit further down, and then now the store specifically is in Signal Hill. People in Southern California have an idea of where that is, but Signal Hill is like a 1.5 square mile city that's entirely encapsulated by the city of Long Beach. So I just tell people that are not as familiar with SoCal geography. I tell them Long Beach, but yeah, we've been here basically post college.
And so post college, I mean, where the store is now,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, I should say, from where the store was in the beginning to where it is now, what types of methods have you used to help grow it?
Methods. Well, really, um, we've kind of just hammered along and just done more and more of what we already knew that we were good at. Um, so, having started in the store opened in the brick and mortar opened in 2018. And then, we're in 2025 now. So that we went through kind of like the COVID phase. Um, One of the things I think that set us apart, especially during that time, was that we really never stopped operating. Never stopped buying cards, so we had an outlet for a ton of the people in Southern California for whatever reason that they wanted to sell their cards during that time, whether it was they needed money for something, or they just kind of wanted to get out of the hobby and turn into something else, or they wanted more cards to buy whatever things. We really kind of hunkered down and did a lot of that. And we entirely reformulated the store. It was a play space, and then it turned into essentially a big warehouse. And then during that time and afterwards, we expanded to like what was the play space and then became the warehouse, stayed as the warehouse. And then now we have a new storefront. So really it was focusing on the things that we already did well and just figuring out why we did them well and then continuing to do those things.
What would you say is something in particular that you feel you guys do very well that maybe sets yourself apart from the other competition? Because I know other game store owners, you all get along very well for the most part, and it's more of a camaraderie than competition. But in terms of trying to distinguish yourself, what are some of those things that you have seen that worked?
Yeah, so I think we have a really there's a couple of things. I think we have a very, very large focus on the like card aspect of it, in the sense of the storefront is always going to be, hold a place in my heart. And it's great that we have people that come in and play the games, but we process a ton of inventory. We ship orders all over the world. We buy cards from all over the world. So having a very, very strong focus on the online kind of retail aspect of it is something that enabled us to grow. We were, I can't say one of the first of, but definitely we were one of the stores, especially in the Southern California area, but a lot of the out of a lot of other stores that I've interacted with, that kind of really put a strong emphasis on that online aspect. And then especially in the beginning, the social media aspect of things. Because yeah, I had tons of people who would, even to this day, they'll see me at like a show and be like, oh my gosh, I remember you from X, Y, and Z, whatever, Instagram. Or so we did a lot of sales that way. And then we really tried to focus on building that kind of that audience that wasn't just kind of in the 20-mile radius around the store. We say you're not so local game store, because we serve a population that is literally worldwide.
And the California area is obviously very large, and it's a
Oh yeah.
large population of people. Is there a way, like, what is the gaming scene like there? I mean, there's multiple stores,
Mhm.
and being a very populated area, is it difficult finding new players, or do you find that maybe compared to a smaller state is not really an issue that you have?
So that's weird, because you would think, oh, there's so many stores that everyone is kind of just like competing with each other, which to a certain extent, yes. You go. I was going to say 5 minutes, but it's a little bit longer when you try to drive around here. But you go just a couple miles really in any direction, you're going to start hitting more and more stores. But the thing is, like, we are so densely populated that more and more people year after year are getting into all of the games, not just Magic, even though that's 95% of our business, but Pokemon, Lorcana, One Piece, all of those things. And then people will just end up finding you. I guess that's just the value of having millions of people that are so close, right? It doesn't take all that many new faces to start building more and more of a community. I mean, all the time we have conversations with people. Hey, I've lived in Signal Hill for 5 years and didn't even know you guys were here. And I'm just like, yeah, well, we've been here for a while now. So, and that happens super frequently. And that's just our, like I said, mile and a half, 1.5 square mile city. And like, that's not even stretching out a little bit further. So it's interesting. A lot of the things that happen with Magic as a whole, like as Magic gets more and more popular as a whole, when there's a really cool set like Lord of the Rings, or we've got people for Assassin's Creed, or a lot of people are talking about, oh my gosh, what's the next one that's coming out? Not One Piece. There's another really cool secret lair that's people have been really hyped about. And that's just bringing more people into the community. And as a whole, when Magic grows, because there's so many people around us, then it just benefits us as well.
So, it makes me think. I mentioned what methods do you use to grow the store earlier. And what I kind of allude that to is marketing tactics to bring people in. And based on what you just said there, it almost seems because new people are finding the store all the time in a densely populated area, you may not have to do as much, say, marketing per se, than a store in a smaller state, in a maybe rural or less populated area. Is that something you've found to be true from your end, or do you still do your fair share of marketing?
Yeah, I mean, we still do our fair share of marketing because, I mean, we still want to come up as, on the top of the page when someone searches us. We have we spend actually quite a bit in terms of the marketing, whether it's like on Instagram, Facebook, Google, Bing, like literally all of the things. So it definitely helps that there are a lot more targets of people. But at the same time, a lot of people are also trying to capture that same audience as well, not just, specifically card game people, but, general nerddom as well. There's a lot of overlap in these kind of things. So, making sure that the person who is interested in card games, right, that, they kind of try and find us first versus maybe some other stores, but also the kind of person who's interested in just like fantasy hobby type stuff in general, that they're kind of maneuvered maybe towards card games versus, a ton of the other hobbies and things that are out there. The double-edged sword, if you will. There's a ton of people, so we have a ton of marketing opportunities, but with a ton of people, there's also a ton of other cool things that people could be doing at any given time. So we have to figure out ways to bring them into our world a little bit more.
And do you find that with specializing in cards, how you've gone really, focused in that direction, has that limited any potential growth in terms of, board people that like to play board games or Warhammer, those types of other, tabletop RPG style games? Or have you become known in your area because of the focus as the place to go play card games, and that's kind of the customer base that you have?
Yeah, so I mean, we very much, and I continue this. I would rather be really good at the things that we do than just kind of be okay at a bunch of different things, and that's kind of permeated all of the decisions that we've made over the years. There's, I personally love board games. I will never stock board games in the store. I'll take a step back. I guess I should never say never, but I can't foresee us ever really stocking board games and things like that. I just the way that I look at that market versus the opportunity in cards is something that I just want to continue to grow. And like I said, if we can be the best at one thing, I would rather do that than be just okay at a bunch of different things. So, to your first question, yes, it definitely has prevented us from kind of growing in that avenue, but I also don't think that that's necessarily bad. There are a bunch of shops around us that also do board games and cool things, and I refer people along the way all the time. It's just not the kind of thing that we want to focus on. So then, to your second question, also yes, people know that not just in our little area around us, but in Southern California in general. Like, I have people very frequently come up to us and say, like, "Hey, I order from you. You guys have everything." And well, yeah, that's by design.
And I know you mentioned that, a never say never in terms of entering the board game market. But when you look at the board game market and the card market, what is it about the card market in particular that keeps you wanting to invest in that realm? And then what you, in comparison, you don't have to go too deep into detail with this, but what is it when you compare it against the card market that the board game market is more of, I don't know if hesitation is the right word, or maybe it's just more expensive, that
Mm-hmm.
side of things from buying board games.
Yeah. Um, I I kind of have I don't know if cynical is the right a term to use when looking at it, but at the end of the day, I'm always trying to, when I'm trying to jump into something or trying to grow it, I want to make sure that the customer is getting the value that they need. And one of the things that board games kind of prevent, at least from someone like me, is that I can stock board games and all of those kind of things, but the Target or Walmart just down the street can also stock all of those things. So I truly don't see any reason why someone would buy it from me rather than buying it from one of those, Target, Walmart, Amazon, any of those kind of things. None of those places, you can't buy singles from any of those places. I mean, maybe you can on some very, very small level, but it's something that actually makes us unique. And in terms of the grand scheme of retail as a whole, when you compare like all of the retail establishments, regardless of what they carry, obviously we're not unique in the sense that we're the only card game store out there. But yeah, I'm trying to do the thing that we can do really well. And I'm not ever going to be able to sell board games better than an Amazon, Target, or Walmart. There's definitely a lot of places that will also specialize in cards. I think one of the things that is a selling point for us is the depth of the specialization. Not only do we have an entire warehouse of all of the different things that you could possibly get. We're always acquiring new stuff. So like the inventory is changing daily. I have an entire staff that works in our warehouse that's constantly inputting new inventory. So everything is always fresh, rotating. If you don't find it today, it's odds are you're probably going to find it tomorrow or the day after. So you're always going to be able to find the things that you're looking for. But in terms of kind of the in-person interactions, or even the interactions over social media or email or whatever, our workforce is incredibly knowledgeable, professional, and friendly, and is able to kind of help you at wherever you are in terms of the journey, whether you're starting to play the games, whether you're looking for information, whether you're an entrenched player, investor, whatever it happens to be. We're knowledgeable all along that realm, and we're going to be able to help you out more so than I would say a lot of other people, even globally, when it comes to interactions on a store business level.
I think about, like you mentioned, all the cards you've collected over the years and to where you started selling them. I kind of want to take a step back from that and think about notion you had mentioned before, which was that you had played GPs back in the day. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and what your experience was like doing that.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of get a little bit of a taste of it now. Now that the Magic Cons are kind of back in full swing, and we have the Spotlight Series. I don't know the plural
I
series.
wish they just called it Grand Prix.
Yeah, exactly, right. So, but now that they're kind of back in action, I think we've already had a couple, or maybe just one or whatever this year. But yeah, basically just kind of like larger scale Magic tournaments. For those that are unfamiliar, but only know of the Magic Cons, just think of a scaled down version of Magic Con where there was, instead of maybe 15 or 20,000 people in the room, and there was 2 or 3,000 maybe, but they were like every 3 weeks. at some place, probably in the U.S., but they also happen in other parts of the world. But yeah, no, I that was it was just big Magic tournament. I don't know too much more to go into, but yeah, I fairly frequently traveled to those kind of things to compete. It wasn't a particularly long career because really I only got back in the game. I say that I really learned how to play the game in like 2012, even though I knew how to play back in whatever when Odyssey came out. That's when I first like picked up Magic cards. So I basically learned how to tap mana and I learned how to attack back then, but then I really learned strategy 2012, 2013. So then I didn't even really start traveling until maybe 2014 or so, and only did it for a couple of years before the store or the business rather, before the store kind of became a thing. But yeah, just larger scale Magic tournaments, smaller than MagicCon, larger than your FNM, but like every 2 or 3 weeks.
Was there a plan at some point during that time when you were playing, like you were wanting to play on the Pro Tour, or was it just you enjoyed just doing the GP level events?
No, I mean, like I wouldn't say that I planned on going onto the Pro Tour. Like that was always something that was cool, and a dream in the sense of, yeah, this would be sweet if it happened. But I definitely liked the competitive aspect of Magic, and obviously going to the GPs was your first step in doing that. So ultimately, I didn't want to just stay at kind of just do GPs every once in a while. Like I wanted to progress, but my progression ended up taking a different route rather than playing the game. So, is what it is.
Well, it's great though, because now you have the store as essentially your game to play.
Yeah, right. For sure. For sure. I get to facilitate a lot of people's enjoyment of the game rather than kind of just being the one playing it myself.
And with, your fandom of the competitive side of Magic, is that what your store is like? Do you cater more towards the competitive side?
I mean, we definitely have our competitive events that go on. We have, a weekly modern event. Now that standard is like kind of starting to come back alive, we're starting to do weekly standard events. For the long time, uh, it's a departure from the traditional like 60 card format, but we ran fairly regular CEDH events, so competitive EDH events. And now we still run those. It's just they're less frequent, so we're making them bigger but less frequent, rather than smaller and more frequent. But no, I mean, I think we cater to the kind of the community as a whole. Definitely the Magic is just a different game than it was 10, 15 years ago, even 5 years ago, where the competitive focus isn't the focus of Magic as a whole. It's definitely a very strong contributor. And it's one of the things that I really enjoy about Magic, but that's on a personal level. It's not has nothing to do with the business side of Magic. We have a very, very strong kind of casual and EDH community and kind of beginner and friendly kind of just like hangout community. So we definitely facilitate that. I think more so than anything, the store is trying to facilitate being a place that people can come almost regardless of how they want to approach the game. And then being able to take advantage of having a space that they can be at, but also having a space where we stock all of the fetch lands and dual lands and whatever stuff you need to make your competitive tier deck competitive tier. And then we also have all of the junk Mimi cards too to make your fun commander deck even more fun. So we cater to everybody to the best of our ability.
Would you say that when we look at how Magic has changed, and you're 100% right about that, even like you mentioned, just the past 5 years, I'm curious when you look back a little bit further to the past and to now, from a business standpoint, is it better revenue wise for the store when Magic was more competitive focused, when that was the big thing? Or is it better that Commander and the more casual side? Like, which have you seen from your personal experience or any conversations you have had? What's better from a business standpoint there?
It's I don't think that one is better than the other. It's just a different way of going about things. So I don't think you can divorce the change from competitive Magic or like 60 card Magic being the focus to like Commander being the focus away from they're just printing more crazy Commander cards, and there's 10 billion cards printed a year versus 100,000 cards. Obviously those numbers are skewed, but we're coming off of in a world where competitive Magic was the focus. We were printing just 4 sets a year. Supplemental sets didn't really exist. None of that stuff existed. Now we print 4 regular sets a year, 12 supplemental sets. Each set also has a commander deck, and we have secret layers, and everything has 3 different printings, and there's borderless and extended and whatever. So it's just in 2 entirely different worlds that we live in. And I think that we now have opportunities now where more cards, we just have more cards that are worth more, I guess, but there's also just more cards. So as compared to, back, we'll say 10, 15 years ago, where the competitive focus was the only thing that mattered, 10, 15 cards a set were the only things that you cared about. Now you care about virtually all of the set, or maybe none of the set actually, and you only care about the borderless foil, whatever extended art serialized version of the cards. I think it's just going about it and looking at it differently and understanding what that means for the way that you inventory cards, what you have in stock, and how you kind of like present yourself going forward. Because realistically, there's tons of, I know other vendors and there's tons of stores that really maybe they only focus on kind of by virtue of focusing on the quote unquote expensive cards, it naturally lends itself to the more kind of competitive formats, right? Like I only stock the old stuff because it's, I'm a single person operation and it's easier to inventory 1,000 cards that are worth $100 a piece versus a couple 100,000 cards that are worth $2 or $3 or $4 a piece. So we're able to serve a lot more customers with a bunch of different varying needs versus just a couple of people that are looking to bling out an EDH deck or make a CEDH deck. So that might be like kind of a non-answer. It's just so different that I don't think that the eras are even comparable anymore.
That's understandable. I mean, what about it from a product standpoint? Like you mentioned the 4 sets a year, and compared to how many things there are now, from your standpoint with ordering, you would think it's more of a challenge with more products, but I'm curious if you've developed processes over the years with now having been in this world of lots of products versus just the 4 sets a year. Is it easier to manage now, or do you still find it to be a challenge compared to how things were done in the past?
Yeah, it's definitely more challenging now from a product perspective, which on some level feels a little counterintuitive. There's more stuff, so you always have more stuff, but there is always more stuff is the hard part. So it seems like it's slowing down towards the end of last year and then into this year and kind of going through. But it feels like 23 into 24, Magic felt like Pokemon for a second, where it's just like every 2 weeks, here's a new product or something. So it's definitely hard to maintain that kind of frenetic pace when it comes to those kind of things. And then definitely, for someone who is trying to like jump into having a store or doing something like that, definitely the kind of like cash flow and upfront payment constraints of a lot of those things can definitely, hamper growth. But the thing that is actually kind of difficult now is because of the product cycles, if something is good, it's hard to kind of keep it and have it stay in stock because there's always the next product that's coming out. So, in the world of 4 sets a year, the distributor had X 100,000 units of whatever product. And then, for the pre-release and release weekend, they sold however much. And then over the course of the next couple of months, you could keep ordering more. Now, when there's 20 product releases a year, they get 50% less, and you get enough for your first weekend, and then, or for pre-release weekend, and then maybe a month or so after. But then a set does really well, and then you can't get it until WotC somehow finds it in their print schedule to print more of it. So we often actually run into problems of, we just don't have enough product, not because we don't want to stock it, but because it just sells, and you're like, well, Bloomburrow doesn't exist at the distributor level, so you have to find it some other way, and insert at whatever other random set, and it just, luckily we were able to get a couple of restocks recently, but yeah, that's kind of the problem that it is now. And then from that's from the sealed product perspective, and then now from an inventory perspective, especially focusing on cards, that's tough because we make the joke about Elesh Norn from March of the Machines, how it had 16 different printings of one particular card if you count foil and non-foil. So logistical nightmare when it comes to all of the different prints of every different card.
We're going to take a quick break from this podcast to talk about our sponsor, Cardboard Shuffle. Cardboard Shuffle was our 10th podcast interview here at the Match Slip with store owner Mark. Mark has expanded his brand and has produced his own card sleeves called Shuffle Shields. Shuffle Shields come in packs of 100 premium matte card sleeves for standard size trading cards. They contain no PVC and are acid free. I have 17 packs of Shuffle Shields card sleeves to give away to listeners of the podcast and followers of the Match Slip on social media. Requests for a free pack of card sleeves shipped for free to you will be processed on a first-come, first-served basis. To receive your free pack of Shuffle Shields, you'll need to send a screenshot that you're following Cardboard Shuffle on Facebook to frank@thematchslip.com.
Do you think that, I mean, this is an oversimplified approach, but do you think that the simple answer to the keeping things in stock is if WotC reprinted more, or is it much more nuanced than that from what you know from being on the inside?
I think it's nuanced for sure. The way that these things work when it comes to printing, distributors, all of that, it's nothing. You can't just snap your fingers and solve the problem. Like, the development of cards is years out. They get sent to the printer a year plus out. Like, what was the set that just came out? Aether Drift, right? Aether Drift was boxed and printed in November of, or a little bit earlier than November of last year. So, you know, if something happened and Aether Drift was just like a banger of a set, it's a good set, but like, you know, think your Lord of the Rings or whatever, where everybody needs it, right? You can't just flip a switch and then, oh, we're printing now. So there's a lot more that goes into it. And then we see the dividends of the feedback and the changes that happen on the top level, WotC level. They happen like 2 years later. So I think we are in the beginning stages of that, where this year we're going to see a lot less products overall, like in terms of new releases. So I think that's the beginning of the feedback that we've had over the past couple of years, and then now it's starting to trickle down and we actually see it happening. And then with that, I think more cards will just be printed, because I mean, the printers, you print a certain amount of cards per second, per minute, per hour, per day. And if you're just printing less sets, then that means the ability to print more of whatever particular sets.
And I'm sure at a store level too, the fact that they are scaling back a little bit the product releases, that's probably a welcome thing on your end as a store owner.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, right? The very simplified answer is like, yeah, print more of the Lord of the Rings sets, and, you know, less of the, less what was it, Brothers War, and well, it's good now. Murders of Karlov Manor, when that one came out, woo, that was a doozy. But now it's good because people need the lands and standard. But yeah, definitely, I think like logistically, it solves a lot of problems. When there's less sets, you know, WotC, the printers, everybody can be a little bit more nimble. We can spin up the printers again to print some more stuff, because they're not like, oh, well, sorry, I can't. This set performed really well and sold past our expectations, but we're queued up for the next 9 months because we have set that are being printed. Yeah, so it logistically makes things nicer, and it definitely helps with the product fatigue for sure from the consumer basis. Which again, I think that's the feedback that WotC got over the past couple of years, and then now we're seeing the results of that, they got that feedback. All right, they dial it back, but they already had all of those contracts in place to get that stuff printed. So it's going to get printed. So now we see the slowdown a little bit.
Definitely. Yeah. And you know, it's something I've always found fascinating when it comes to the printing of cards is you can have a card that's, say, worth 25 cents, for example, but then other sets come out, the development of a format, and that card can skyrocket to $20, for example, say.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
what I've always, and especially with competitive Magic being back, and I mean, I thought about this after you brought up Murders of Karlov Manor, how that didn't do well, and now it is because of the need for it. Is that like a tug of war game almost? Like you as the store owner have to like, do you look to just move a card, you know, if you can now, or are there things where you have to look at how formats are developing or look at any past trajectories to see, you know, where cards might be valuable at some point? I just always wondered how you keep track of all that to be able to determine, you know, is this something worth selling now, or is it you have it and you just look to sell it at that point in time?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, everyone that you ask in the capacity, and I actually have these types of conversations on different levels with other vendors and stuff that I know. And everyone that you ask is going to have a different answer on this. But our focus is always just whatever we have, and then maintain the sales levels that we need to maintain in order to, you know, cover the overhead, cover the projected growth that we need, and then keep moving on. I am not in the market of speculating and buying something and holding it in almost any regard. I know a lot of people are, and there's a ton of people who do it very lucratively at individuals stores. They're like, oh, this is going to be good, and then they stash away a bunch of them for a year or two or whatever. And that's definitely, if you're smart enough and you have that data driven approach, and or lucky enough, I guess, it's definitely one way to go about it. But we are, like I said, very good at what we do. We can process both in and out a ton of inventory every day. So I don't see why I would buck the trends of what we're very good at and just not continue doing that specifically. If that means that some of those couple thousand cards that I sold that were quarters are now worth $20, and okay, cool. So yay. But I sold a couple thousand of those 25-cent cards when they were worth 25 cents. And then now that they're $20, I buy them at the shows that we go to, or people sell them back to us, and then I just sell them again now that they're $20. I'm not looking to kind of just like hold and stockpile stuff in the hopes that it might do well, or even a very educated guess that it'll do well. We do what we do really well, and we continue to grow that avenue rather than speculating.
No, that makes a lot of sense. What is your day-to-day operation like at the store? Like, what do you have to do day to day when you're going in? Are you in at the store every day, or do you have certain days you're not in? I'm curious what your part of the operation entails these days.
When you say you, do you mean me, Michael, or Finch and Sparrow Games?
You yourself.
So I deal in a lot of the logistical back of house stuff. I actually don't really deal in the card game specifically things very all often anymore. I will go to the storefront from time to time, and you know, I'm able to process transactions. I can do trades. I can buy cards. I can obviously ring up transactions. And I can run an event, but I don't often do all of that anymore. We have 22 people now, most of which are working in the warehouse, processing, you know, the intake that we get. But right now I'm working on kind of like building out our show team to travel where I don't necessarily have to travel anymore. Or if I do, I'm traveling to another event while we have other events going on. And working on the behind the scenes things that grow the business even bigger than it is. So yeah, I get to deal with the fun stuff like taxes and, you know, HR and all of those other fun things that have nothing to do with Magic the Gathering cards or Pokemon cards or any of that stuff.
Did you say you have 22 employees?
There's 22 people. Yes.
Wow, that's a lot. Now, do you have them separated out into various roles within the store? Now we can, I guess, talk about the operation of Finch and Sparrow Games.
Yeah, yeah. So it's 22. Hopefully, I'm actually in the process of trying to hire another couple of people right now. So my goal is hopefully within the next month or two to be at 25 or 26. But yeah, it's definitely broken out for the most part. My philosophy is everybody should have an idea of what everybody does, right? They should have a general sense of like the game plan of what the store is in general, and have an idea of what's going on in that way. But I definitely have specific people doing specific tasks, just because our focus is our inventory, our singles inventory specifically. The vast majority of our staff works in the warehouse, processing inventory, inputting stuff. I have a couple of people who specifically work on shipping our orders. So that's all that they do. They create pull sheets for the staff that just pulls cards for orders. So they pull those cards and then they pack them and ship them out to their various locations wherever they're going to. And especially during like high pre-order seasons, they work on, we break down the couple of pallets of, the product that we get, and then they ship that stuff out to its locations. We just got off of Aether Drift, so we shipped out all of our pre-orders a little while ago. And then I have staff that works specifically at the storefront. So they're the ones who run the events, our day-to-day events. They will process like trade-ins, in-store trade-ins, and ring up transactions for the people that come into the store, and then deal with like that kind of stuff. There's like some specific like sub specializations, I guess, within there. Like one of the people that we have that does that works in the storefront also runs a lot of our social media stuff. One of the person works a lot on the website stuff with our high end inventory. Think your like duels, power, stuff like that. And then I have staff that is also working on just like maneuvering the warehouse in terms of like our inventory, processing a lot of the bulk that we get in, and all of the stuff that's kind of like in between from there too.
And I know you talked about your convention team that you're trying to put together so you don't have to travel as much. I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I know we've scheduled this podcast interview and we both went back and forth with our schedule trying to figure it out. And so I'm kind of actually fascinated of how many events you attend and what that kind of entails, because I know that, packing up, and bringing stuff to an event to sell, or, even if you're just going for the networking purposes, it could be a lot. And so if you could talk a little bit about your experience with that, what benefit you find most out of it, and the process of putting a team together for that.
Yeah, it's there's definitely different aspects of it. For the most part, you can kind of think of it as just a mini store, right? You have the people who are processing the transactions where I'm Timmy, I want to buy X card, and okay, here's my money, there you go. And then you also have people who, because we do trades and we buy cards at the shows and stuff as well. So then we have people who are, that's kind of their specialty. So we have our team kind of built in those two different ways. But on top of all of that, then everybody who travels to the shows knows how to actually like build up and set down. No, set up and build down. I don't know, whatever. The booth, and how to make it, look up to our standards for what we want it to look like, how we want it to flow, and then build it up and break it down every single day. And then at the end of the weekend. So there's definitely most of the skill sets that we already have kind of overlap pretty heavily. And then there's the extra, added bit of having to build it up and break it down. But in terms of the overall benefit, like you said, that there's a number of reasons. Honestly, the shows aren't really even particularly just because we want to try and sell things, right? Because we're already doing that. We sell, if we sell a card at a show, we would sell it in the store, or we would sell it online, or whatever anyway. But it enables us to find people and deal with others that are outside of that, that 20-mile radius around Southern California, around the store. So we get to see a lot of new faces that we wouldn't have otherwise seen. And I've made a lot of really good business relationships from seeing other vendors and interacting with other vendors all over the country. We just happen to go to the same events. Or we see each other multiple times, or now we know, oh hey, oh, so are you going to X, Y, and Z as well? Oh, okay, cool, I'll see you there. I'm not going to that one, but I'll be at that one. And then we end up meeting up. So there's a lot of additional benefits that are not just, oh, I can sell cards at a show.
How many do you do a year?
So we're building out our schedule more and more. Last year, the way that I look at it was kind of the learning year, proof of concept year. 2013 was, okay, I lied. 2013 was really like the proof of concept. 2014 was just like, all right, how do we, is this something that is scalable? So we learn. And then 2015 is going to be the year of like, okay, how do we actually maximize these? But we're in the neighborhood of somewhere, I don't know, maybe on average every other week, every third week, something like that. It's a little bit different for us as well. So we also have a secondary location. It's not a store per se. For those in the Southern California area, they're probably familiar with Frank and Sons. It's like just it was like an old Costco or Sam's Club or whatever, and it turned into kind of like a nerd paradise where there's a lot of cards there and things. So there's another version, kind of, I won't say version because it's not run by the same people, but it's called Ninja Exchange. It's in Carlsbad, so just north of San Diego. So we also have a secondary location there. So it's kind of like an event in the sense of it is only Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's every weekend though, but our space is it's permanent. It's a permanent location, but it was an old Sears building, and now it's just kind of grid wall, and there's 100 or however many different vendors in there, and each little stall is kind of independently owned and operated, but we have a secondary location there as well. So technically we have something going on every week. If you consider that an event, or if you consider that a second store, then we don't have something going on every week. But yeah, our travel schedule is like super busy. Like this coming weekend we're going to a show, and then after that, we're going to the MagicCon Chicago, and then following MagicCon Chicago, there's a Collecticon in downtown LA. So it's like back to back to back. In October of last year, I don't know why I did it to myself, but we had 5 weekends in a row where it was back to back to back to back to back, I guess.
Must have been exhausting.
Oh yeah, no, it was rough. It was rough, especially because one of those involved a trip to Europe. Because there was a show going on in Europe. So
that's right. You told me about that one.
Yeah, that was the kickoff weekend. And then yeah, it was downhill from there. But yeah, afterwards it was strange. It was exhausting, but also just always being on the move. It feels weird not doing that again.
I think it's a good thing of how you do attend all these events, as exhausting as it can be, even doing the stuff with Ninja Exchange, for example. And it's funny too, because it does get the name out about your store. I mean, just to give you an example, the way I found out about your store was through, I believe, Ninja Exchange, because the YouTuber Deep Pocket Monster, Pat Flynn,
yep,
he went to your booth in one of his videos, and I said, oh, I got to reach out to him now.
yeah, we've done a lot of stuff with so Pat Flynn, he lives in San Diego. I see him every couple of weeks. He's a super cool guy. But yeah, no, we're actually in, if you look back in his history, we're in like 4 or 5 of his videos. He stops by frequently. We were actually at Card Party as well, which was the big like Pokemon show that he puts on. And he did one of his challenges with us. So yeah, that's cool that's how you found us.
Yeah, and it's kind of wild too, because I used to follow him from his business stuff back in the day, and then I found out he was doing a Pokemon channel. I was like, holy mackerel. And then I started to find, just from his videos, various game stores, and so yours came up, and I was like, I got to reach out to Mike now.
Yeah, there you go. Awesome.
So now, if with the convention scene and doing so many of those things, I know you mentioned you're building out the team. For you, once you build out the team to where you see fit, I'm sure you'll still attend various events, but not as many probably as you're doing now. Once you get to that point, is your primarily focus at that point going to be doing all the logistics stuff, or is there more that you'll be taking on at that point once you're not having to put so much of your effort into the convention side?
So, I mean, there's definitely aspects of both of those. There's a lot that goes into just once operations start to grow, then all of the overhead associated with that also grows, and that just becomes more and more of a job in and of itself. And when I say overhead, I don't like literally mean, I don't mean just the costs. I mean it becomes someone's job just to plan all of the things. The amount of time that I've spent just planning, like I'm already starting to plan stuff for uh September, October, November of this year. And when I say plan, I don't just mean, oh, this is a cool week. Yeah, I think we can go to the show, but like, no, booking hotels, booking flights, like getting pallet services all set up. Like it starts to just get further and further out because more and more pieces of the operation are starting to intersect with each other. So then that just means more stuff that has to do on the preparation side of it. So I think to answer your question, there's a little bit of both. I think once there's a fully built out team for it, it'll enable me to, go to the fun events, right? The one where I'm just like, oh, cool. Yeah, I get to hang out with Pat Flynn at Card Party. I'll go to that one. But also it enables us to then just do it again. Because being in Southern California, we are fortunate in this regard when it comes to like card games and stuff like that, where you could go to a show every weekend if you wanted to. Obviously, they're not all huge, and they're not like a Collecticon level size, but there's a bunch of shows that are, maybe 100 or 200 vendors, that there's something going on that's drivable in SoCal. And if you expand that just a little bit to, Las Vegas or, Arizona, or, going up to Oregon and Washington a little bit, then there's so much stuff that's going on. So we're ignoring 2/3 of the country,
Right.
not because we want to ignore it, but because just there's so much stuff going on here that we might as well deal with the easy things first. And then that enables us to then, once we have one team, then I can build a second team, and then we can just be everywhere always.
Does it get overwhelming at all, or is it because you have this large team that you're able to facilitate to, you're kind of used to it at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm perfectly whelmed. I think that there are the things that I won't say overwhelming, but the things that are difficult or challenges or things that we have to overcome are, again, not things that are necessarily about the business on the day to day. Again, I keep kind of going back to it, but we know what we're really good at, and we do that and continue to do that really well. So we use that as a model for anything else that we do. The challenges come in connecting all of the pieces, and just naturally when the operation gets bigger, there's just more things to have to kind of understand and manage. So another show, I could plan and do a show, half asleep with my eyes closed. That's not hard. Doing a second one, yeah, it's just another more of that, and then coordinating the schedules. I think the difficulty starts to be in, okay, at a certain point, there is literally just not enough hours in the day, and having the teams being able to cooperate with each other in such a way that the flow of inventory or the flow of even like cash being going back and forth between where we need it to be, and the logistics of all of that is done kind of cohesively. That's the more difficult part, rather than just like, oh, it's just another show.
And since you touched on one of the difficulties with running the business from a convention standpoint as an overall, what would you say is a positive that's working really well right now?
Positive, like in what regard? From like
just with running the store, anything that you've maybe noted in your mind of something you'd like to see done, or a process you've put in place, anything along those lines of operations that's working really well for you right now?
Mm-hmm. Okay, for sure. I think just because we were talking about it, I won't say that, that the store is not doing well. It's things are definitely great, but it's kind of on we've mastered, I guess, that aspect of it, and then there's always room for growth. But just the immediate inclusion of, say, all of the various events and stuff that we're doing, it's new territory comparatively. We've been doing it for a year versus, how I don't even know how long the store is. What is this? 2018 to 2025, what is that, 8 years now? So we have 8 years of experience doing the store stuff versus maybe a year and a half of experience. Well, I mean, we vended at GPs before, but of this kind of just frenetic pace of events. But I think one of the things that's going really, really well is the plan that we have put in place to try and hyper focus on individual elements of each show and how we can build those out really, really well. I know the answer, like, to go fully into this answer of like what's going really well, we would have to get into the ultra weeds, because I'm like super data driven. Like, I have spreadsheets for everything. I track each show. I track what we sell, how much of it we sell, what we buy, how much of it we buy, and I compare it show over show and year over year. So the thing that I think that's working really, really well is our metric system and how we're tracking, and then how we're using that data to be better each and every show.
That's fascinating that you go that detailed with it, but it makes sense that it's working, especially with the fact that you're able to do so many of these shows and that they are working out well and you're able to grow a team from them. Because I'm sure if you probably weren't being as detailed as you are, I'm sure that would leave a lot more to chance.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, every show, or, every kind of like day is going to be a little bit different in regard to the shows, right? There's every show is going to be a little bit different, right? We have general expectations kind of going into something, but there's a lot of things that, unlike the storefront, are out of our hands. I don't control the marketing budget for a Collecticon. They, maybe whoever their marketer was didn't spend enough money on Google Ads or whatever it happened to be, and the turnout isn't as good as they anticipated, or whatever it happens to be. Whereas on the day-to-day, I control all of that for the storefront, so I can make those really informed decisions on what we need to do and what we need to do next. Whereas at the shows, obviously we can only control the aspects of it that we control. So definitely we have a general expectation of what we can expect on any each individual show, but a lot of the beginning stages, like I said, 2023 was kind of like proof of concept. 24 was like, okay, 23 was, can we do a show? 24 was, all right, can we figure out how to scale shows? And now that we know how we can, 25 is, how do we maximize it? But the end of 23 and into 24 was all of that data collection. So, right. I can't really make informed decisions if I only go to 2 or 3 shows, or even if I go to, 5 or 6 shows, but they're all in summer or they're all in fall. So after, 30 plus shows under our belt, spread over the course of, a year and a half, different seasons, different types of shows, different locations, I can start averaging out the data and being like, find whatever outliers, and then being able to make sense of all of that. And then now build off of what we know and figure out what's good, what's not, and grow from there. And there's been a ton of things that we've actually started off doing, products that we would try to bring to shows, or things that we would do that we jettisoned because we're like, oh, this in theory makes a ton of sense. In practice, oh, it was terrible. And then things that we didn't do are like, this, why would we do this? And then we found, oh, actually, if you look at X, Y, and Z, then this is actually a really good thing to try and explore. And then, we've learned from that.
Fascinating stuff, Mike. I love how deep into detail you go with this, and to the extent that you've taken. It's really just impressive to see the growth and the success you've had from doing it. Just very impressive.
Yeah, well, I mean, I appreciate it. It's definitely been a fun learning process for sure.
I bet. From the retail storefront area, can you describe, like, somebody walking in for the first time, how you have the store laid out, what somebody would see?
Yeah. You park you start walking towards us, we have like, big glass windows so you can see in. You will see a bunch of tables that are open play. You walk kind of through the tables on, we have one wall. One of the sides of the store is, offices and storage where we have some stuff. We have one of our walls, or one of the doors has like a cool D&D painting on it. On the other side, we have our accessories. So if you walk in to your right, you'll see the deck boxes, sleeves, play mats, all of that kind of stuff. Just right next to that, right over there, there's kiosks where you can jump on a computer, order cards. You can see what we have in the inventory. Then if you keep walking straight into the store, you'll see like our little snack concession area. And then you'll see kind of our wall of sealed product. And then our, what I call like the front of store, like the POS area. We have a couple of display cases with some of like, masterpieces, expeditions, like kind of cool singles. We have some Pokemon cards in there. Some of the eye candy stuff, if you will. And then, then you'll see our employees that are there to be able to help you out with your transactions. So really in terms of like the most of the space is taken up by tables and chairs by like a vast majority. Because that's kind of what the storefront is for people to kind of come hang out, play, and then they can process their transactions.
And as we wrap up here, Mike, I wanted to just ask one more thing related to your future goal for the store. It could be more than one if there is one, and it could be a lofty one at that as well. So I was just curious, as you kind of assess like traveling through like the future here, what's something you want to see for the store?
I tell this to people frequently, actually. I'm kind of a weirdo in the way that I approach these kind of things. So my goals for the store aren't like, well, what I would anticipate is like a particular, like a normal response to that question. Like, oh, I want to start carrying this, or I want to do this many things. My goal is actually like a logistical one to be able to facilitate the growth of the business as a whole. My next kind of target is warehouse or store space somewhere in the middle of the country to facilitate a warehouse, but also like a logistical hub for the traveling and things that we do, so that I don't have to worry about being locked to just Southern California or, this side of the country. I have a base of operation that is able to move kind of to the East Coast with ease, to the West Coast with ease, and all of those kind of things. So it's kind of like a logistical framework expansion that is what I'm trying to do and trying to work on through this year. Actually, is the stretch goal, if you will, would be sometime this year. But I think a more realistic expansion plan in that regard is sometime next year.
I think it's a brilliant idea. I hope that all comes to fruition for you. And I think with your work ethic and your drive and your logistics, I think it'll definitely happen.
Yeah, here's to hoping.
Yep, without a doubt. So as we wrap up here, Mike, is there anywhere you'd like to point people to that they could check out the store, learn more about it?
Yeah, I would love if people kind of stopped on by. Just if you go to finchandsparrowgames.com, you'll be able to find us. It's the website where you'll be able to get your cards, pick up some fun stuff. If you are social media inclined, we're at Finch and Sparrow Games with underscores in between the words. We post up a lot of stuff. We do a lot of fun things. And if you happen to be in Southern California, either come on down to Long Beach or head over, or if you're in San Diego, head over to Ninja Exchange on the weekends, or pay attention to the shows that we're going to, because we travel a lot. So, depending on when this comes out, maybe we'll see you in Chicago in a week or two, or, downtown LA. We're going to be in Atlanta, Seattle, Arizona, Vegas, all over. So just kind of stay tuned. We'll meet you somewhere.
Exactly. Plenty of opportunities to meet Mike and the Finch and Sparrow Games team. Mike, thank you again for coming on. This has been a fun time.
Oh, most definitely. Thank you so very much. It's been great.